Hi everyone, Jordan again with another video on Google Apps Script. Today I'm going to demonstrate using the content service to provide JSON data to for whatever you might need it for. In this case, I've been working on a project for some friends of mine that involves app smashing and kind of creating a digital app smashing tool. But basically, I have a spreadsheet of apps in various categories and on various platforms, and I want to turn this into an object that I can use in some JavaScript in another without having to retype everything in here. So, talk more about that once we get into the script editor. What we're going to be doing is taking this sheet and then reformatting it as JSON, and I'm going to just call this JSON example. The JSON, it stands for JavaScript Object Notation, because it's basically just taking an object the same way we use objects in JavaScript. And it's kind of serialize that information and make it easily transferable, and then it makes it so much easier for us to use. So this is going to actually require the doGet trigger, and I'm not going to pass in the event parameter because in this case I'm not going to use it. And from this, I'm going to actually build this function from the end before talking about what we're going to do here. I'm actually going to create the result, and it's going to be an empty object. And then this function is going to return, and normally we would type this HTML service and go from there. However, we're not returning HTML. We're going to be returning content, and specifically a string. And so this is going to be create text output. And we need to then put that result in here, and we're going to set the MIME. I don't know if you say that mime, like French mimes. I have no idea, but we're going to set the mime type to JSON, and that code completion for us really helps out here to remember all the various keys. So one last thing we've got to do is actually convert this result, this object that we're going to build. We need to actually make that a string first, and then it'll get reinterpreted as JSON on the other end. But we can do that with the JavaScript service JSON.stringify. And I'm going to pass the results into JSON stringify, and then we're going to set the MIME type. Perfect. Now, we don't actually want to send an empty object through here, so we actually have to put some things together. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to create result.web equals an empty array, and result.mobile equals an empty array. And what we're going to do is from this spreadsheet, we're going to grab all of the mobile apps, and we're going to put those in categories, a writing category, photos, graphics, with the right things in there, and then we're going to do the same thing for the web. Now, we've got basically kind of the skeleton of our content, but let's go ahead and deploy it so we can see what we're looking at here. Let's project version. It's important the way that you deploy this here, because you want to execute the app as yourself. You want it to be me, but who has access to the app? You're going to put anyone, even anonymous. Might be able to work with just anyone, but we're going to use this anyone, even anonymous. So this data then becomes kind of public. It's not secure. Any sort of security you would want on what you're returning would have to come through the parameters that you pass in. Usually if you pass in that event parameter, you would have to put some sort of key or password or secret phrase or something on there to protect your data. But we're not going to do that. We're not worried about protecting the information. So I've deployed this, and I'm going to actually copy the URL, and we'll just take a look at it in the browser. I'm using an add-on, a Chrome extension called JSON View, and that kind of formats it to look really nice for us. There's a couple other ones. I think there's JSON Formatter that'll do the same thing, but it allows us to kind of look at it in the browser. So anyways, let's get back to what we're building here. We actually don't want empty arrays. We want to grab the information from the sheet. So let's create a mobile variable, and we're going to call our spreadsheet app get active spreadsheet, and then get sheet by name, and we want it to be mobile. I believe it's mobile and web. Yep, mobile, capital M, and web. Mobile. I'm going to space this down to the next line. Get sheet by name, mobile. I'm going to then get data range, and then I'm going to get values. And that creates my multi-dimensional array of everything that's in that sheet. And I'm going to do the same thing for web. Equals spreadsheet. In fact, what I'm going to do, I'm going to just copy this whole deal, and then I'm going to paste that deal, changing mobile to web. Okay, now I can erase these empty arrays because I'm going to take this mobile variable and this web variable that I've created, and I'm going to format those to be to look a little bit nicer. So I'm going to actually, and then I'm going to put the results of that on the web, and I'm going to create a function called makeObject. Mobile equals makeObject, and inside of each of these functions I'm going to pass in web, and in here I'm going to pass in mobile. Because basically what we're passing in is a multi-dimensional array. Both mobile and web are multi-dimensional arrays. We're going to pass them into a function, and we'll call that function makeObject. And I'll call this multi-array. And I'm going to create some space here. Looks a little bit better. And basically what I'm going to do is I'm going to return an object, and I need to create that empty object. So now I'm going to turn an array into an object keyed exactly the way we want it. So the first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to pull the headers off of the array, and we can do that with shift. Oh, I forgot to put equals here. It's kind of an essential part of declaring a variable, is that equals. So I'm going to shift off the very first thing, and those are going to become our headers. Then we need to actually loop through the rest of the multi-array, and I'll show you, I'll kind of talk through it as I go here. So I'm going to loop through it using a simple for loop, for var I equals 0. And close my email down. I is less than or equal to headers.length, and then increment that I variable. So inside of here, then I'm going to grab this object, and then I'm going to put headers I is going to be our key for our object. But what is that going to equal? We want it to be another array. And let's take a look at what we have here. I'm going to comment out this comment service, control / and then I'm going to just log my results.web. So it should create a bunch of categories with empty arrays. So let me run do-get, and I'm just going to hit that play button. Oop, it's asking for permissions. That is fine. It is, my creation, so I don't mind giving myself permission. I'm going to allow that. Hi, Jordan. Running function do-get. Results is not defined. Results, because I did not call it results, I called it result. Perfect. Good typing. So let's take a look at the logger there, and it's exactly what I wanted. I have got these categories with empty arrays. But now I got to put some stuff in those arrays. Obviously, I don't want empty arrays. So instead of an empty array here, what we're going to take is that multi-dimensional array, and we're going to use a map method, which is an array method that allows us to really kind of loop over. It's just another way of iterating over things, but it returns everything into an array, so that we can basically, this equal sign is going to send everything from our map into this array. Before we had just made it a blank array, but now we're going to have the results of this map function, and it takes in one, well, it actually can take in 2 parameters. You can actually put the incrementer, but I don't need it, and it would have to be something other than I, because I've already used the I here. So anyways, it's just going to be the app, because it's going to take each individual app, push them through there. So in this, I'm going to return app and with the increment on it. And I believe that'll give us exactly what I'm looking for. So I can still run this again, and now I should have, instead of empty arrays, I've got all of the tools that I wanted there. Apps. So web graphics would be Adobe Spark, Google Draw, Sumo Paint, Draw.io, all kinds of good stuff in there. Now, when I uncomment out my content service, tripping over words here, content service, when I uncomment that and run it, I should see a much longer object. Oops. And I shouldn't actually see the much longer objects, because what I'm doing is, let's look at the dev copy here and let it spin for a minute. Let it spin. Internet is slow. And there we go. Perfect. Web graphic, video, audio, writing, review, silly, publication. And then I've got a mobile object with a bunch of things that can all be used on mobile. Perfect. Well, how can we then use that in an application? Maybe somewhere else. So this example is bound to my spreadsheet here. But maybe I have some other, maybe this is just an unbound, going to be deployed as a web app tool, totally separate from any project. But I want to still use the this tool that I've created, this JSON data that I've created. So I'm going to update everything. I'm going to copy this URL, and inside of my function, I'm going to create a URL string, and then I'm going to call the URL fetch app, and I'm going to fetch URL, and I'll save that as response. And then I want to parse the JSON there. So I'm going to pass in response. And then maybe I can, I'll just log it here. Logger.log parse response. And I've got to actually save a parsed response. And if I run this, it's going to ask me for permissions again because it wants to access an external service, which is fine. That URL fetch app is going to grab our data. Here's connect to external service. That's what the URL fetch app is doing. And so from a totally separate project, I am going to get all of that information that I can then use. And maybe instead of parse response, I want parse response dot web dot let's pass mobile graphics. Mobile graphics, is that one of the categories? It should be. No, it's not. Oh, of course it wouldn't be because it's not in the web. So let's say web, and then I've got web audio. So web audio. And if I log that to the console, then I have exactly what I'm looking for. Twisted Wave, Soundtrap, Audio Tool, Churbit. Perfect. So hopefully that helps you get started playing around with kind of building your own API, turning a spreadsheet into a service that you can use in other projects that you're doing. As always, subscribe, like, comment, send me any messages, any suggestions. Whatever you do, keep building.